President Biden is set to travel to Baltimore this afternoon to tout the bipartisan infrastructure deal. He has yet to sign it into law after the bill passed Congress last week. Meanwhile, negotiations continue on the larger package, focusing on social programs and climate change. The president's visit comes as numbers show inflation is not easing. CBS News senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang joins me now with the latest. Hi, Weijia. So after the infrastructure package passed the House, the president said it would have a positive impact on the economy and the ailing supply chain. So should we expect to hear a similar message in Baltimore today?
That's certainly going to be a big part of his message today, Tanya, but the president also wants to lay out for the American people an example of how this money that was just passed through the infrastructure plan is going to help various cities, various communities throughout the entire country. So specifically for Baltimore, for example, he'll talk about the billions of dollars that will go toward improving the highway system there. In Maryland, it will talk about the waterways there. It will talk about, as you see on the screen, modernizing public rail and transit, expanding broadband, strengthening the power grid, upgrading water pipes. So this is really his first shot at selling this and promoting this to the American people to make sure that they understand how this will impact them, but also to get some credit, right? I mean, you know, he has talked before about how under various administrations, the credit was not given because they didn't tout loudly enough their accomplishments, and he wanted to make sure that wasn't the case for the things that he works on his agenda, because he wants people to know what he believes he is doing to changing their lives. But to your point, Tanya, you know, the Port of Baltimore is actually an example that the White House points to of one that was able to maintain a steady flow and not have disruptions like others in the country because there were modernizations, because it was kept up. And so I think they'll point to this as an example of what more investment can do for other ports around the country, especially as we continue to see the clog at several of them, which is contributing to the supply chain issues and, of course, inflation that you just talked about.
And, you know, as you know, the president released a statement earlier acknowledging inflation remains an issue for everyday Americans. How is the White House focusing on addressing the rising prices?
Well, President Biden just issued that statement this morning after that pretty dire report came out to show that the increase in consumer goods is the biggest increase since 1990. And he said, on the one hand, the good news is that there are more jobs being created and more jobs being taken by everyday Americans. But he did say that reversing the trend of inflation is a top priority for him. And he believes the energy costs are the main reason it's happening. So you see here, he says he's directed his National Economic Council to pursue means to try to further reduce these costs. He also is working with the Federal Trade Commission to make sure that everything is managed properly when it comes to oil. But one thing, Tanya, that he has not responded to is this letter from 10 Senate Democrats who are urging him to tap into the emergency oil reserve to bring down some of those prices. And we've asked the White House about it, and so far they haven't responded. But, they are really pushing for him to take more urgent action because, as we're all experiencing, those prices continue to go up at the pump.
Absolutely. And Weijia, let's turn now to the pandemic. Monday marked the deadline for federal workers to get their final COVID-19 vaccine shots in order to be fully immunized by November 22nd. But now a union representing thousands of government employees is asking for an extension. How is the administration handling that?
So I just spoke to a couple administration officials about this, and they really wanted to stress that the point of these mandates is not to punish any federal worker. They really believe that this is about protecting them in the workplace. But they didn't go as far to say that, yes, they will extend the deadline. They did say, however, that no federal worker would be removed until they had the opportunity to go through counseling, to take other steps to show that they eventually will comply with the vaccine mandate. So without directly responding to this union to say, okay, we will give you the extra time, they are saying that, they don't plan to penalize any federal workers that don't meet that exact deadline. Now, whether or not that will change, if that particular worker continues to refuse after counseling and after they've taken additional steps to build in more time, that's yet to be seen, because I do remember President Biden was very clear about this when he announced it, to say that, you know, if you don't get your vaccine, then you're not going to be working in the federal government. So he had a pretty strict message. But I think that the administration also wants to let people know, they say that services, that federal services will not be interrupted as a result of workers not complying with the vaccine. So I think it's too early to tell exactly how this will play out and how many federal workers will refuse ultimately to get the vaccine because there is still time left.
Right, there is. And the leaders of Canada and Mexico plan to meet at the White House next week for a summit. Do we know what they're expected to discuss?
Well, certainly COVID will continue to be at the top of the list, in addition to this summit that they will have, which is the first one for North America since 2016. They will have bilateral meetings, so the president will be meeting individually with the leaders of Canada and Mexico to talk about a wide range of issues, from the pandemic to trade relations to immigration and border. So I think that this will be a pretty comprehensive meeting, since it's their real first opportunity to meet in person here at the White House.
All right. Well, Weijia Jiang at the White House, thank you so much.
Sure.